You can have a seat. Thanks for being here this morning. My name is Andrea Smith. So glad that you have chosen to spend this Sunday here with us. For those of you who are worshiping online, we are also very grateful that you are there and love seeing your names pop up in the chat room. If you are new to the West community, if this is your first Sunday worshiping with us, or perhaps you've been here a couple of times but you've not taken that step to let us know that you're here, we have a VIP tent out front, and we would love for you to just take just a second and let us know by filling out our form. And then you can choose whether or not you hear from us in the future. We do daily devotions. We send out an email every Friday letting you know what goes on. We have a texting system. We text you and let you know opportunities that you can be connected with. And all these communication systems have been honestly just invaluable over the past couple of weeks, especially as we unite together to provide assistance and relief for our friends, our brothers, and our sisters in the mountains of North Carolina. And so it's really important, actually, that you become a part of our communication system if you would like to be connected. So I want to talk about that for just a few minutes. Last Sunday, we had what we do only one time a year, which is on Christmas Eve. We take up an offering. We believe that our offerings are out of our gratitude and our gratefulness to God for all that we do, but we also don't want to beat you over the head with money. And so we have offering baskets in the back. A lot of our giving is digital, and so we don't ever have a moment in the service, because it makes, if you're new to faith or new to church, a lot of people have a lot of baggage associated around money. A lot of people have baggage associated with money, period, in life, but especially with church. And so we don't ever want to be threatening in the space of worship. We believe that if you encounter Jesus and you fall in love with Jesus, then you want to be grateful and show your gratitude through financial offerings, but we don't want to ever push you or make you feel lesser than for not doing it. So that's why we don't pass like an offering basket or an offering plate. But last Sunday, we had a moment where we took up an offering that will go directly to the people that have been impacted by the hurricanes. Now, I want to give you just a little bit of context about West. If you're newer to the West community, we have about 400 people that claim West as their church home. We don't have members. You don't have to join. But if you're here and you're engaged in an ongoing manner, we consider you a Westie, and we consider you a part of this faith community. And so our budget, which we're going to share about that later on in November, but our general offerings, they go like this. The first Sunday of the month, it's usually anywhere from 9 to 10,000. The second Sunday, it's like 2 to 3. The third Sunday, it's around 5 to 7. And then the fourth Sunday is 2 to 3. So you can see the pattern. That's our general offering for a month. Now, last Sunday, we collected $17,000. I know, right? I mean, and we had collected $1,000 the week before. So total for hurricane response, money only, you have given over $18,000. And that is amazing. And the really cool part is that last Sunday, it was the first Sunday of the month. And so I, of course, looked at when I get the report, I looked at the hurricane response number first. And I saw it, and I was just like, wow, so moved by your graciousness and your generosity. And then I had just a second of panic. I'm like, I dread looking at the operations, because we still have to pay the rent. We pay salaries. We pay set up and tear down. There's so many just things that we have to pay. And so I was scared. And you know what? It was like, I don't know, 11 or 12,000 for the operations last Sunday. And that meant more to me than just the hurricane offering, because what it said was that you believe in the mission and the vision of this church, so that you fund it happening. And then you went deeper. And I'm going to talk about this in the sermon today, because I'm talking about being aware of the presence of God and seeing God in all things. That's what we're talking about today. And it just keeps happening here over and over and over again. You packed a trailer last Sunday of propane tanks that were so desperately needed in the mountains. And then we had volunteers take those to our district office, who then took them up the mountains. And then we had a team that was able to serve a meal in Avery County. We're co-leading that ministry with some other pastors, and I'm going to talk about that in the service. Thursday, we drove up the mountain to go to Avery County. You had to go a lot of back roads because the main roads are still closed. And I've heard about roads being washed out and washed away. Nothing could have prepared me for what I saw. Like, I mean, they're not exaggerating. It's real. You'll just be like right there, and then the other half of the road is gone. And the thing that I was struck by, two things. First of all, if you see on the screens, these signs, thank you, God bless, were everywhere. Painted with lots of different techniques and mediums, and on the backs of notebook paper, whatever they could find, folks were saying thank you. And so I hope you hear that. I hope you know that whatever sacrifices you have made to help others, it's so apparent. And the other thing was, as we drove up the mountain, it's really curvy roads, and it goes from 1 lane to 2 lane, and you try to pass each other. It's a little like Mario Kart. And so you're going up the road, and it would get ready to merge. Now, if any of you have driven on 150, you know what it's like, or Williamson Road, when the 2 lanes become 1. It is like dog eat dog. I am not letting you in no matter what. We do not understand zipper merge. I mean, it is you fend for yourself. And I will admit, I was in charge on Thursday, so I was really stressed about getting the food up there. It was the first time we've ever done it, and I wanted everything to really go right, so I was driving quickly. And as we got closer, to the top, like the traffic, it became a lot. And it was trucks and trailers and construction equipment, as you can imagine, going up the mountain to help. And there'd be the 4 lanes, and then it'd go back to 2. Now, it is in my nature to not drive behind construction equipment, especially if there is enough room for me to pass it. However, I learned a lesson on Thursday. Do you know that, first of all, I was never in front. There was always a car in front of me, and that car taught me about generosity of space, because every single time the cars would slow down instead of trying to pass and let the big construction vehicles or the relief trucks come back over, and we always were last or slower to let them go and lead the way. That's different than what we see out here on 150. And it was powerful, just in that small thing, watching cars pause for big trucks and tractors so that they could get where they needed to go. We've shared with you, this is not a sprint, it is a marathon. One of our West families knows some folks in Asheville, and they found out in their neighborhood they will not get water probably until March, just because it's so remote and it's so not a top priority. And so we are committed to being all in. Tonight, Lance, one of our lay folks, one of our leaders of West, he and I are flying to Indianapolis, and we're going to land around 11 and spend the night with Rob and Susan Fuquay. Rob is the senior pastor of St. Luke's United Methodist. I think it's the second largest Methodist church in our denomination. And they wanted to help. Rob is from here. He's from the mountains. He was at Williamson's Chapel. He actually gave permission for the vision of West. He's the one who said go and do. And so this creation came out of his leadership. And when the hurricane happened, he called and said, what can we do? And he said, my folks want to do more than just give money. So they have rented a U-Haul truck, a 20 to 25-foot U-Haul truck, and it is being packed right now as we sit here in worship. They're packing it as an act of worship, and Lance and I will drive that truck home here tomorrow. On Tuesday, we need to unload said truck because it needs to go back to U-Haul home Tuesday evening. I don't know what it looks like. I don't know what's in it. I won't know until tomorrow morning. And so please watch your email and your text because it will take us working together as a team. We're going to get it unloaded and then get it distributed where our conference leaders tell us that it needs to go. And we'll be figuring that out as well. But we will need your help, and everybody can help. You don't have to be able to lift heavy things like there's baby formula and diapers and toilet paper, all kinds of stuff on this truck. And so we would love to have your help on Tuesday, so watch for that. It's a powerful time in our world where we can watch people come together and love one another. And I'm pretty sure if we are Jesus followers, that's what it's all about. Thanks for being here.
Here's an interesting phrase that we use quite often in English when there is a thing that we won't or don't want to discuss or talk about. We can describe something that might be embarrassing or awkward to talk about as being the elephant in the room. A thing that people feel ashamed or embarrassed about discussing can be described as the elephant in the room. A group of people might sit around and they all know that there is something that they have to talk about or discuss. However, no one wants to talk about it. No one wants to discuss that particular thing. It is the elephant in the room. People sometimes feel awkward or ashamed or embarrassed when talking about a particular thing, even though it is completely obvious. Especially these days, you have to be so careful about what you say because you might upset or offend someone. So these days we might be even more cautious about discussing certain things. Do you have an elephant in the room? Is there something that you want to talk about that is clear and obvious, but you don't want to, just in case you cause a problem? It is the elephant in the room.
So when we went up the mountain on Thursday, we went to Avery County. We went to Pine Grove United Methodist, and that's where we were going to be serving the meal. And we've set up this system that we're going to serve the meals every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. And so since I'm serving as one of the coordinators of this team, I wanted to be on the ground and see how things went before like other groups, because other churches and other pastors are serving. So I wanted to go. The whole point, and we actually have a team leaving on Wednesday of this week to go up to Hendersonville, and they'll be staying at Camp Toccoa and beginning helping some folks up there clean out. And then hopefully, if lodging and everything works out the way it's supposed to, we have another team leaving next Monday. I'm going to take a team for 3 days up and continue that work. We're going to have ongoing teams. Our district is going to have some opportunities. And so when you go into these spaces, this is really important. Our bishop sent out an email yesterday morning. He does musings and meditations on Saturday, and he talked about the hall monitor. Think back to school, elementary school, and when you'd have to walk in a line to get from point A to point B, and there was always or typically a hall monitor, and they would, tell on you if you got out of line, heaven forbid, or if you talked in line, or if you did anything wrong, the hall monitor would be on it. And so the bishop was encouraging us as we do disaster response to not be hall monitors. Like, that is not our job, is to be looking around and telling everybody else what they're doing wrong. When you go into a disaster response situation, it is less of us and all of the people that we are there to walk alongside and offer our assistance to. So when they say things, it's really important that you listen, that we listen. I'm talking to myself just as much as I'm talking with you. Like, it's important that we not try to tell them the best way to do whatever it is that they need or want done. Our job is not to impose. And so when we got up to the mountain, I was most worried about the lack of restroom facilities. I'm not a man, clearly. And so I have some anxiety around that. Like, guys, they can just use the restroom wherever. Women, not so much. And so this story is relevant. I'm not just telling you personal details that are like the elephant in the room, but this story is really important. So there was a point person there from the church. Her name was Pat. And she was just on it, making sure that we had everything we needed, but trying to make this meal. It was going to be the first meal served out of the space. And I heard one lady share it was the first hot meal she'd had since the rains came. And so Pat was helping everything be just so. We made it about halfway through the meal, and I'm like, I drank too much water up the mountain and should have known better. And she's like, look, we can help you use the restroom, but, it's just dark. And I'm like, that's fine. I can do dark. I've done this before. And so she led me into their church, and they had a bathroom in the back. And I want you to picture, like, what this space would look like if there were no stage lights. Like, it was not just dark. It was very, very dark. Now, Pat, I think, was worried about me because she opened the door and she said, it was a one-stall kind of situation. She's like, can I hold the door open? Can I come in there with you? And I'm like, this is beyond weird right now. Like, no, I'm regretting this decision completely. And I didn't want to let her in because it was awkward and a private situation. And I was so determined that I was going to do it by myself. But I couldn't see. And again, like, I've fixed enough toilets in my life, like when the little thing gets hung in the tank, like, I knew what to do. So I'm feeling my way around, and I'm taking this thing off and trying to lay it down, like, so I can lift it, and I have a gallon jug of water, precious water, that I'm supposed to pour in the tank, doing all of this while I cannot see. And that was hard and messy. I got the water basically in the tank, but then putting the tank back, the lid back on, it just did not go well. And when I opened the door to go outside, I could hear Pat and some of the others. They were like, do you think she's okay in there? She's been in there a really long time. Should we go in there? They didn't know that I was close by, and they were worried about me. If only I had allowed for her to help, to invade my personal space a little, I wouldn't have had to rely on my own lack of intellect to try to see. But because I was so private and, embarrassed to a point, I wouldn't let her come in and hold the door open enough so that I could have a little bit of light. In this message series, we've been talking about what we talk about when we talk about God. And hopefully, over the last several weeks, if you've been a part of the series, and if you haven't, you can catch the messages on our podcast or on our website. Hopefully, it's caused us to dig a little deeper and realize that sometimes we talk about God in ways that are true to the very essence, and then sometimes we carry around baggage around God, and we have these preconceived understandings and ideas of God from long, long ago that can be pushed and pulled. And we can see and experience God in new ways that maybe we've never even thought about before. We've talked about the fact that God is in science. We've talked about the fact that God is not contained in human understanding, that when we put our human words around God, we are trying to limit God. And we understand that we want to talk about God, but putting those words around it, it's almost as if we're trying to put God in a box. And so today I want us to think about for just a few minutes, what is it like to really see? And I don't think we truly and really see until we're humble enough to realize that we don't always see. I don't like to be wrong in a lot of settings and situations. In the office, I don't mind being wrong. We try to create a culture in our staff that it is okay to fail. And so in that setting, I'm okay to say, you know what, that was a really bad idea. Or, you know what, you're right, I'm wrong. Don't mind it. But in other spaces in life, I don't like to be wrong. So I want you to think about for just a second, when is the last time that you were wrong? And when is the last time that you admitted you were wrong? Because those might be two very different things. We like to dig our heels in, right, when we want to be right, even if we know that we're not. When's the last time you were wrong? As I was studying for today's message and the devotions that I've been writing, I was reading Rob Bell's book, What We Talk About When We Talk About God, and he was saying this sentence that I know I've used hundreds of times. God showed up. Have you ever heard that, or have you ever said that? Like, God showed up. We would be on relationship mission trips. One was in the middle of the island of Jamaica, and we were working with the school for the deaf. And there we were helping them build their village so that the graduates from the school could be employed and become self-sustaining. And we were there in that space. And we were confronted with, just some really, really aha moments. Like sitting on the top of this giant mountain, and we were digging in what seemed like endless amounts of rock. And all of a sudden we found a fossil on a rock of a fish. And we were struck by that because we're on the top of this mountain in the middle of an island, and clearly, at some point, thousands and thousands of years ago, that space had to have been covered by water because there was this fish fossil in this rock. It was so awe-inspiring for the team, and everyone was like, oh my gosh, this is God. God showed up. God showed up. I love that phrase. I even thought it Thursday. I'm like, God, you've shown up. And then in going back through all my notes and stuff on Friday, I found this one nugget, and I'm like, oh my goodness. Rob Bell says, if we say God showed up, it's almost as if we're nullifying all the other parts of God. Because guess what? God didn't just show up. God's always been there. God did not just show up. God has always been there. So I want you to take a look at this quote from Bell. What our experiences of God do at the most primal level of consciousness is jolt us into the affirmation that whatever this is, it matters. God doesn't show up. What I would like for us to take away from today is God is. God always has been. God is. And God will always be. There's a word that describes this. In the Hebrew translation, the word is ruach. Ruach. It means the very spirit and the very essence of God. It means that energy and that presence, and it appears in the Hebrew scriptures over 350, more than 350 different times. The word ruach shows up. When they talk about God and God's presence, they use the word ruach. There's a book in Hebrew scriptures, the book of Job. It is about a man who really just goes through absolutely every trial and every tribulation one human can go through. He loses his family, he loses his physical health, everything around him, his crops, his animals, everything. It goes away. And he's left with seemingly nothing. And then in that space, I want you to hear what he says. God is alive. Now, whereas my request has been denied, and God has denied me justice, God is alive, God Almighty. For as long as I draw breath, for as long as God breathes life into me, I refuse to say one word that isn't true, and I refuse to confess to any charge that's false. For as long as God breathes ruach, is how it translates. As long as God breathes ruach into me. Ruach is that energy and that presence that is always there. And anytime they referenced God, they did not reference and think about God the way that we do. We think that God's like out there, something far away that we can like tap into and we can become a part of if we want to. God is so much more than that. God is in all things. Do we see? And when do we get in our own way of seeing? Surrender is such a big part of our journey. Surrendering our ego, surrendering our need to be in control, surrendering our need to be right. Like, I've read this chapter from Rob Bell, 10 times at least. I have it on Audible. Anytime I'm in my car, I'm listening to it over and over again, just trying to understand it. Every time I listen to it, I learn something different. And so when I got to that part where he says, when we say God showed up, we're really diminishing the meaning and the impact of God. I got my feathers ruffled. And I'm like, what do you mean? Because I've said that for years. I've said it on mission trips. I've said it to hundreds and hundreds of people. Over my course of ministry, I'm like, God showed up. So I started thinking through it, and I'm like, Rob Bell's wrong. He's wrong. It's okay to say that. And you know what? The more I thought about that, I'm like, have I not just been doing a whole message series on being willing to admit that maybe we don't have it all figured out, and maybe it's okay if we approach God with an ever-evolving understanding and willingness to learn? And why are you sitting in your car arguing with the Audible book? I'm like, this is not right. I'm not using this in my sermon on Sunday, or my message on Sunday, because he's wrong. It's okay to say God showed up. But it isn't, because it does. It says, if God showed up, then where was God to start with? What if we will change the way that we think about it and the way that we go about it? And what if we will accept that God's always been there? And now we see, oh my gosh, now we see. Have you had those moments? Have you had those God aha moments where, you're just going through life and like everything's okay and it seems, just pretty mundane, and then something so small catches you and you're like, that's pretty cool. Maybe I see God now more clearly. That's what it was like Thursday in Avery County, not just the bathroom. The bathroom experience humbled me, and I'll explain why at the end of the message. But like, we got our little food ready, and we were standing there, and there aren't words, actually, to describe the way God was present in that space. So the linemen working so feverishly to put the lines back up for the folks. Like, they still didn't have power. They didn't have water in this area, power. And the linemen came through the line. And 2 gentlemen came to get meals for their whole team. And we did not look like the bar and grill at Chili's. We had our little sterno pans and everything laid out. So they didn't know if we had extra or whatever. And they're like, please give us the least, because we want to take these other 8 plates to our men. So, just give us the least and fill these full. What a way to see God. We didn't have to be talking about God. We didn't have to be in a church. But what a way to see God. Hey, I'm working just as hard as they are, but I want less so they can have more. Does that sound like Jesus, who, of course, embodies for us the very essence of God? But the most powerful moment was a lady came, and she shared with us that this meal, chicken nuggets, which were a hit, and green beans, and corn pudding, had never heard of that before, but it was a huge hit, and homemade pound cake. She's like, it's the first warm food I've had since the rains came. So over 10 days. She said, and I'm so grateful, because my neighbors have nothing. They've lost everything. And can I take them some? She hadn't had any warm food for 10 days. Most of us don't go more than 4 hours. But she was worried about the other people around. And we got to hear her story. And she told us about where she lived. And it just, the way that she talked about humanity and the ways that people have shown up. She said, I believe in the goodness of people again. She said, folks that have not had to come have come, and they have helped us save what we can, and they have given us hope. God didn't show up. God was and is and always will be. But the people that went, whether or not they were professing Christians, they were being God in that space and that time, and she was choosing to see. And then those of us there, able to spend time with her, we were choosing to see as well. Ruach, the very spirit and the very energy and the very essence of God pulsating through all things. It is near and far. It is seen and able to be seen. It's in the big and the small. It's in the aha, oh my gosh, I've seen the northern lights over the past couple of days. If you have had that privilege, I have not, but I see on Facebook that you have. I'm jealous. That's the experience of God. But standing in the middle of a church where the people have lost basically everything, and every pew was lined with winter coats, folded neatly for the residents of the community to come and be able to get something warm to wear because the nights are cold there now. In that small space, and seemingly, perhaps for the people that had donated those coats, small act, I was humbled because that was God. Do you let yourself see? Or are we just too busy, too deep in our phones, too deep in our own stuff, that we're missing out on what always is? The same thing happened to Jesus. He was with his disciples, and it was nearing the end of his ministry, and they were gathered together. They were hanging out, and they were having dinner, and this woman burst into the room, and she has this really expensive perfume, and she goes and she uses it to anoint his feet. And the disciples were mad because she had wasted a precious commodity. And they started fussing about her to Jesus later. And he's like, don't you see? You're all wrapped up in your logistics and your stuff. What she just gave me was a beautiful gift. She prepared me for burial. It was a ritual, very sacred act. And you can't get past your own stuff to see. They were around Jesus all the time, their whole life and existence was to see. And they missed it. Odds are we do too. I do. At the end of our time at Pine Grove, we went back into the sanctuary because we were getting ready to go. And the drive down the mountain, it's a 3-hour drive, and there's not really anywhere you can stop. So we were going to tag team it in the bathroom again. I brought a buddy this time. We walked in, and we opened the door, and all of a sudden, all the ceiling fans in the sanctuary started turning. I've never seen people be more happy for something than those folks in that space be so grateful that their power had come back on. The lesson in that, though, was I had totally screwed up that commode. And all I could hear was swish, swish, swish. And Tanya's like, I think their commode's broken. I didn't go into it. I'm like, I have messed up the back of the tank. I'm like, I just need a minute. And in my fumbling around in the darkness, because I was so dadgum stubborn and private, I didn't want somebody else standing near me during the peeing experience. Sorry, but I have to say it. I didn't want some stranger 5 feet away so I could see. I'd messed up something, and I was losing the very commodity that they do not have because of my own just stuff. I was appalled in the moment. I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know how many gallons of water now have gone down this tank because I was so just myself. And I vowed in that moment I would be more open to not having to do it my own way, to allowing others to help, even if it makes me uncomfortable. And I vowed in that moment to be more determined to see. I want you to take a look at this video. This is the pastor of Pine Grove. He had his own Seeing God moment this week. Take a look.
Hello, my name is Pastor Brent Nidifer here with the Pine Grove United Methodist Church in Avery County. I want to say thank you to each and every one of you for your support, your prayers, and all the assistance that you have sent to us over these past few weeks of our devastation. I was just sharing that our fellowship hall was flooded. We had a team from Tony Ruth Smith's church come and do some cleanup. And we found out that because of the water damage, we had mold and we need to tear out the fellowship hall sheetrock. And we were wondering, and I was just praying about what are we going to do or how are we going to get that done. And lo and behold, yesterday morning, I had a phone call around 9 o'clock from a church in West Virginia. And the gentleman, the pastor there, was saying, hey, we want to bring down a team to help. What can we do to help you? And so I was just sharing with him about our need and how it was just amazing how God was working to bring that into our midst. And so we're working that next week. They'll be down here bringing a team of construction workers to take out sheetrock, put back sheetrock, and do some cleanup and work for our fellowship hall facilities. So y'all keep praying. Again, thank you so much for all that you have done on behalf of God's people and the church family here in Western North Carolina.
Let us pray. And as we pray, I invite you to hear these words from the psalmist David. God, investigate my life. Get all the facts firsthand. I'm an open book to you. Even from a distance, you know what I'm thinking. You know when I leave, and you know when I get back. I'm not ever out of your sight. I look behind me and you're there, then up ahead, you're there too. Your reassuring presence coming and going. This is too much, too wonderful. I can't take it all in. Is there anywhere I can go to avoid your spirit? Is there anywhere I can go to be out of your sight? If I climb to the sky, you're right there. If I go underground, you're right there. If I flew on morning's wings to the far western horizon, you'd find me in a minute. You're already there. Then I said to myself, oh, he even sees me in the dark. At night, I'm immersed in the light. It's a fact. Darkness is not darkness to you. Night and day, darkness and light, they are all the same. Gracious God, help us see. Help us see that you are in all things, with us all the time. You don't show up, you've always been. Forgive us of the times that we get in our own way. And forgive us of the times that we neglect to see. Help us see so that the world may see. We offer ourselves to you in Christ's name. Amen. I invite you to stand and sing. You know, that's the whole crux of it all. Like, if we're thinking about all the stuff that happened in the past, it's so tempting to get stuck in the past. Or if we're worrying about what is yet to come, then we're fixated on that, and 85% of the things that we worry about never come true. Staying in the moment, that's when we're most able to see. May we go and be a people of seeing, again, so that not only we, but the world can see. Go in peace.